Hey guys, my name is Gloria, and you won't believe it, but I eat money. I love its taste and crunch, but it was not always like this. It's just that at some point, I wanted to try something new in my life. To be honest, this turned into a certain problem for me. I live in a very wealthy family. My parents are big businessmen who sell cars all over the world, so I have everything that any teenager can dream of, and even more than that. For example, on my 13th birthday, my parents gave me a yacht on which I had a cool party. When I turned 14, I got a helicopter. And if you think that's cool, you're wrong. You see, when a person doesn't have a lot of money, they can dream and get incredible emotions from purchases. But I can't do that. I have everything, and I no longer dream of anything, and new expensive things do not evoke any emotions in me. Lately, I have lived as if in a vacuum that was covered with gold. Everything around me was shining and sparkling, but this didn't impress me. However, one day, everything changed. Once my classmates and I were hiking, but had a little trouble. The branches of the trees were wet because of the recent rain, which, by the way, hadn't been mentioned in the weather forecast. In addition, Leo even forgot to take paper despite the fact that he was responsible for the things that were necessary for the fire. This meant that we would not be able to make it. We were already getting a bit nervous because Leo's lips were blue from the cold, and my hands became numb. The rest of my classmates tried to keep warm by hugging each other. We needed too much time to go back, but we were already exhausted. So we had to stay there and shiver with the cold. Some of us have already begun to think that we would freeze to death there. For some reason, it was this moment that one brilliant idea came to my mind. I completely forgot that I had several bundles of notes in my backpack. I took them out calmly, set them on fire, and then put more or less dry branches on them. This was how we got fire. The guys didn't cry as much from the horror stories that we told each other on the way. As for me burning the money, they were really upset seeing this. While I actually felt some kind of pleasure, I love seeing shocked faces around me, and it evoked emotions in me. I decided not to stop there, so when I got home, I ordered the housekeeper to light the fireplace. When the flame was blazing in it, I was throwing green bills there. I enjoyed watching the fire consuming them, because at that moment, I felt almost like the lord of the world who could afford anything. However, I quickly got tired of it. And again, I found myself in a void. But I did not want to be there so much that I decided to do another crazy thing. I smashed my car, which cost several million, with a bat. After that, I cut many of my branded clothes with scissors. But the problem is that I still do not feel joy and happiness at all. And then, one evening while suffering from idleness, I was watching a YouTube video of a girl eating a $100 bill. At that moment, I thought she was crazy. But a little later, this idea seemed to be very tempting to me. I ripped a $10 bill in half and ate it. Well, you won't believe it, but I even liked the taste of money. Also, the note crunch so cool on my teeth. And since then, I have eaten several bills every day. Once, I came up with the idea of making a salad out of money and adding garlic sauce to it. That was yummy. But then I wanted to show everyone how cool I was. Right at school, I made myself a sandwich with $100 bills and ate it in front of my classmates, licking my fingers. They were shocked and asked why I was doing this. I replied that I liked the taste of money and then suggested that they try the wonderful sandwich too. Leo said that I was nuts and I was doing some kind of bullshit. Because of my antics, I lost a friend who for some reason didn't want to talk to me. He began to ignore me, and it seemed so silly to me because I did not judge him for eating a lot of burgers. However, Leo's ignoring did not stop me, and every day I continued to eat money in the school cafeteria. The guys told me I was crazy while I found their reaction funny, and then I decided to go to a new level. After coming to the park, I sat down on a bench. I took out my wallet and started eating money. I also made a thick straw out of bills and began drinking a milkshake. Some people were looking back at me while others were making comments, and one guy even took my wallet with money and ran away with it. I just laughed at it because it was already empty. And then some old lady sat down next to me. After looking at what I was doing, She condemned me and said that I did not value anything in this life. I didn't want to listen to the moral teachings on how I should behave, so I decided to visit my favorite cafe to get a coffee and cheesecake. But this turned out to be a real disaster for me because I was badly poisoned, and in the evening called an ambulance to be taken to the hospital. While I was lying in the ward after my stomach wash and waiting for my test results, I published an angry review on the page of that cafe, mentioning that one could easily get poisoned there. However, when the doctor entered the room, he said that the printing ink caused my poisoning. He asked what I had eaten on that day, and I told him everything, emphasizing on the coffee and the cheesecake. But the doctor said that my addiction to banknotes, which were soaked in a very dangerous and toxic paint, was to blame. He added that if I had continued to do the same thing, I would have died of poisoning very soon. I immediately deleted the review from the restaurant page and thought that I would again have to look for some crazy way to evoke emotions of myself. And I will also have to say goodbye to the wonderful taste of money. This made me really upset, and because of negative thoughts, I could no longer stay in bed. I decided to take a short walk down the hospital corridor and call my parents. They were abroad at that moment, but promised a Sunday driver with a package of normal food. And when I was waiting for it, I noticed a girl not far from me who was sitting on a chair and reading a book. I was very bored and decided to chat with her. Her name was Dina, and she also got to the hospital because of poisoning. We got into a conversation, and I thought that Dina was a very interesting girl who was beyond her years. When I was handed a whole bag of groceries, I was very happy. And then I noticed with what desire Dina looked at it. I asked if she had anything to eat besides hospital food, and she said that her parents didn't have the money to buy that much food. It turned out that Dina was from a poor family where all the attention was devoted to her disabled younger brother. He needed care and expensive medicines, which consumed most of the family budget. Dina said that she was not mad at her parents because they were trying to help him. Her story moved me, so I gave her my entire package. I also felt terribly ashamed. For a long time, I did not know what to do with my money. Because of that, I started eating it. While many people cannot afford even basic food. What a blind idiot. Before my discharge, I handed Dina a check for $100,000 to make it easier for her family to support the children. She refused it at first, but I still convinced her to accept the check. And then I decided to help other children and families. That's why I gave away all my pocket money to charity, so that there would be more and more happy and healthy people in this world every day. Why haven't I thought about this before? It's so great to help others. While being engaged in charity work, I finally began to experience vivid emotions, which were in fact only positive. It was much cooler than burning and eating money because they made me feel relevant and useful. Hi there, my name is Ginger, and I once was stuck on a Ferris wheel for 24 hours. Believe me, I have never experienced such fear before. But before telling the story of my adventure in the amusement park, I will share with you my little secret. I'm terrified of heights, and I've been since childhood. Once, going down the stairs, I accidentally stumbled and fell. After falling. I broke my arm and I got a concussion. I had to spend some time in the hospital, and when I was discharged, I realized that I was experiencing a terrible fear, not only of stairs, but of any heights at all. At that time, my parents and I lived in an apartment building on the 7th floor. Before the accident, I liked looking out the window at the cityscape, but after the birth of my phobia, I felt uncomfortable when I was looking out the window. Fortunately, after a few months, my parents bought a 1-story house. However, my phobia had not disappeared. I tried to avoid high buildings and come down the stairs carefully so as not to fall off of them again and get injured. Also, I refused many attractions in our park, which my friends loved to have fun on. I had to stand and wait for them. Because of this, I had been feeling left out and strange. I also wanted to ride a Ferris wheel or Russian mountains, but when I looked at their height, I started to feel dizzy. One day, I nevertheless decided to follow the advice of my friend and plucked up the courage to ride the Ferris wheel. The fact was that my friend was terribly afraid of spiders all her life. She overcame her phobia by placing a spider on her arm. At first, she was disgusted and terribly scared, but then she realized that the spider would not do anything to hurt her. and that she should not be afraid of it. I thought that maybe I would not be able to overcome my fear too if I was confronted face to face. So one day, I went to the amusement park, bought a ticket for the Ferris wheel, and sat inside the booth. A stranger girl was already sitting in the same booth. I thought, that's even better because then I would not be alone. When we started to move up and everything inside me was shrinking, I closed my eyes and could not look out the booth window to admire the beautiful cityscape. I kept thinking that I would either die of fear or the booth would unhook from the base and fall down. But then I plucked up my courage and looked out the window. The superb views over the city fascinated and frightened me at the same time. And when I thought I had overcome my phobia, the attraction suddenly stopped. At first, I thought it was done on purpose because sometimes the attraction workers would stop the Ferris wheel for a while to entertain the people. But the joke had gone far enough because we hung in the air for far too long. And then I became so scared that I even started feeling dizzy. I started to imagine terrible pictures of how the attraction would begin to fall apart, and I would fall down from a great height. My whole body was shaking, and I did not know what to do. The girl who was sitting opposite and looking at me strangely caused even more discomfort. I was so nervous that I vomited right in the booth. I had never felt so ashamed. But the girl did not laugh at me. Apparently she understood that I was so scared, and she took my hand and began to calm me down. I didn't feel any better because I kept thinking we were about to crash. At first, the girls started to talk very slowly and only then introduced themselves. Her name was Erica, and she tried to convince me that we would get down soon and everything would be fine. Erica wanted to sit beside me, but as soon as she got up, the booth shook and I started screaming loudly. However, my screams did not stop her. Erica hugged me and said that we could not fall down and we would remain unharmed. She also advised me not to look down. I felt a little calmer next to her. Besides, the park workers used a loudspeaker to inform us that the rescuers would arrive to pull people from above. This news cheered me up. Then I tried to think that I would be on the ground soon. But time passed, and no one was in a hurry to get us out of that booth. It was already dark outside, but the rescuers still did not come. I asked Erica to look down and see what was going on there, and her answer did not please me at all. The wheel was so high that the rescuers' basket simply could not reach us. I heard that, and I could not help but cry. It seemed to me that this nightmare would never end. We heard from below that the repair work was already in progress and that the workers would soon let us down. But I did not believe their promises. I was so scared that I could no longer control my hysterics, and even Erica was powerless. Soon she began to get nervous too. The entire horizon was blackened because there was a thunderstorm hanging about. Heavy black clouds approached the city, quickly scattering bright flashes of lightning. A strong wind rose, and the booth began to swing from side to side. And then I saw that a tornado was approaching us. I realized that no one would have time to help us, and the booth would simply be carried away. The dark funnel was getting closer and closer to the ground, driving the wind to an incredible speed. I didn't have any strength left to scream, and I lost consciousness. A splash of water from Erica's bottle brought me to my senses. I started to tell her about the tornado which would soon be here, but she assured me that there was no tornado outside. I was pointing outward and tried to prove that we would soon fall into the funnel. However, there really was no tornado. It turned out that an immense shock and intense fear triggered my imagination, which caused hallucinations. But my hallucinations were not the worst moment of the whole day. Due to the severe thunderstorm, the power went out in the whole city, and if there was no electricity, then no repair work could be carried out. The darkness was broken only by flashes of lightning, which were everywhere. We were lucky that the Ferris wheel had a lightning rod that saved us from being hit. The booth swayed with gusts of wind, and the windows trembled with thunder. My head was very dizzy again from the thought that this was really happening. I couldn't even dream of this in my nightmares. Erica said that the situation probably wouldn't last long, but she was wrong. We sat on this wheel until the morning, and all this time, the fear did not leave me, even for a minute. If I hadn't Erica's help, panic would have completely seized me. The new acquaintance told me various stories from her life, and admitted that in fact she was also afraid of heights and came to the Ferris wheel to overcome her phobia. It cheered me up a little bit because I also used the attraction for the same reason. I asked how she managed to stay so calm, and Erica replied that at that moment she cared more about me than about the height. Her words inspired me a lot. I thanked Erica for supporting me all this time and trying to distract me so that I would not go crazy in this booth. A few hours later, lights around the city turned on and the repair work resumed. Soon the attraction started working again and we were taken down safely. My parents were already there waiting for me. They called me just before the storm and asked why I wasn't home. It was so late I didn't have time to explain anything to them because I was frightened by the strong thunder and I turned off the phone immediately. After this incident, my whole life was turned upside down. First, I got a great fear of thunderstorms. As soon as it started, I closed the windows, turned off all the applications throughout the house, and went to sleep in my parents' room. Secondly, I began to scream in my sleep often because of nightmares, which frightened the whole family greatly. My parents became seriously worried about my condition and turned to a psychologist. He said that my shock caused such serious consequences as paranoia, anxiety attacks, and hallucinations. Therefore, I had to go to the hospital for a long-term treatment. The good news was that my parents and Erica used to come to support me and tried to cheer me up so that I would not be very sad. But that was the only good thing. A few weeks later, the doctor told us the bad news. He said that after the stress I had experienced, my phobia had developed so strongly that I had to take medications for several years to suppress the occurrence of hallucinations, panic attacks, and fear. He also added that from time to time, I still had to go to the hospital to continue treatment during phases of intensification. This news did not make me happy because I did not think that my unusual fear of heights could result in something so serious. I even had to leave school because there were stairs leading to the 3rd floor. For me, this height was so frightening that I began to have panic attacks again. At my request, my parents transferred me to the distance education, despairing my psyche. When some people from school knew why I started distance education, they began to write bullying messages to me on social media. However, my most faithful friends tried to support me and continued to communicate with me no matter what. After the terrible night on the Ferris wheel, Erica and I became best friends because the common phobia helped us to grow closer.
What was that? The man and woman's hike through a gently rolling portion of the Rocky Mountains has taken a turn for the dangerous. There's something there in the bush, the man tells her, before stepping in front of her in a defensive pose. They watch the bush intently. There's a slight rustling of the leaves as if something is inside. The man picks up a stick from the ground and holds it in front of him, ready to strike whatever fearsome beast is lurking in the underbush. The rustling stops, but the man doesn't move from his protective stance. "Do you think it's gone?" the woman asks. The man isn't sure. He leans in towards the bush, searching for signs of what might be hiding inside when, "Ah!" the man screams and falls backwards as the creature emerges from the bush. "Oh," the woman cries, "it's a pika." She kneels down to get a closer look at the adorable little creature. Pikas are native to this part of Colorado, and they resemble rabbits but with small, rounded ears. She watches it hop back off the trail before turning around to see her friend lying tangled in the branches of a tree. She can't help but laugh as she offers a hand to help pull him out of his predicaments. "Are you all right?" she asks between fits of laughter. Yes, he's fine. The only thing hurt was his pride. He notices a small red spot on his arm and rubs it, but it doesn't seem to hurt at all. His attention is diverted by the woman, though, who is marveling at the tree he was just stuck in. Free of the branches, he can appreciate now that this tree really is incredible. It looks like a huge blue spruce, but the name is a complete misnomer, because this tree is a vibrant red colour. "I've never seen anything like it," she says, and the man hasn't either. Neither knows what species it is, and strangely, there doesn't seem to be any others like it. Maybe this is the result of an odd genetic defect that turns blue spruces red. After admiring the tree for a moment, the pair decides that they've hiked far enough and that they should probably head back to the car. She jokes that he's likely exhausted from his run-in with a wild animal, and he laughs, but clearly his ego has been bruised. The man stops his car in front of the woman's house and she thanks him for taking her. As she starts to get out, though, he stops her. He asks if she wants to do something else, like dinner. The woman thanks him for this offer, but she has to be up early the next day for work. "Just a quick drink then? An hour? 30 minutes?" The woman tries her best to let her friend down easy, explaining that she likes him as a friend and only as that. The man opens his mouth to respond, but she stops him. If he valued their friendship, then he wouldn't try to take advantage of it by using it as a backdoor to dating her. The man again looks like his pride has been shattered. He apologizes and admits that she is right. It's just that he has such a good time with her that he never wants it to end. She gives him a sad smile as she closes the car door, and he watches her enter her house before he finally drives away. It's 2 weeks later when the man's phone rings. It's his friend. She explains that she's been thinking a lot about what he said in the car and that she likes spending time with him too. Maybe there could be something more to their relationship. The man can't believe it. Is this really happening? The woman is serious. She'd like to take him up on that dinner offer if he's still interested. Her treat. She wants to know what he is doing right. Ah! The man suddenly yelps in pain. Is he okay? What was that sound? Yeah, I'm fine. It was nothing, the man tells her. It's just that now's not a good time. The woman doesn't understand. She thought he'd want to see her. She explained that she's leaving town for a work trip the next day and will be gone for a couple of weeks. She was hoping she could see him before she left, but the man cries out in pain again. He tells her that he hasn't been feeling well all day, but that he'll be all right. Okay, well, get well soon. I'll call you when I get back. They exchange goodbyes, and the man hangs up the phone. The man looks terrible. His skin is pale, and his face looks hollow and gaunt. He looks down at his arm and sees that the veins themselves appear to be moving, pulsing, and vibrating. He screams again in agony and falls to the floor, clutching his arm. After writhing on the floor, he manages to summon the strength to reach for the phone. His hand searches on the table above him, and eventually he's able to knock it onto the floor. He grabs the phone and starts to dial 911. Before he can press 1 again, another wave of intense, searing pain consumes him. Several weeks later, the woman is standing outside the man's house. Mail and newspapers are piled up on his front porch, as if no one has been out or in some time. She knocks on the door, but there's no response. Hello, she calls out, but still nothing. She's very worried. She's tried calling him several times, but he never answered or returned her messages. She tries the doorknob, and to her surprise, the front door swings open. She steps inside, and the room is dark. She's almost immediately hit by a strong aroma of pine? She searches on the wall and finds the switch. She turns on the lights and can't believe what she sees standing in front of her. There, in the middle of the room, is a massive spruce tree, its upper branches pressing against the ceiling. She reaches out and touches the tree's vivid red branches. She pulls her hand away and looks down to see that it's covered in a red substance. That's when she notices something else. Stuck among the trunk at the base of the tree is the half-consumed body of her friend. Unfortunately, this pair would never have the opportunity to see their feelings take root and grow. Because unbeknownst to them, this beautiful tree is actually a very deadly anomaly, known to the SCP Foundation as SCP-867, but which is perhaps better known by its very appropriate nickname, blood spruce. SCP-867 is, or at least appears to be, quite similar to the species of tree Pica pudgens. SCP-867 is, or at least appears to be quite similar to the species of tree Pica pudgens. Of course, there are a number of dramatic differences between 867 and its non-anomalous counterparts. Visually, and most obvious, is the coloration. While blue spruces, as the name implies, are typically a blue-green color, SCP-867 is a deep, vibrant red. There's another major visual difference too, with the blood spruce lacking any sort of seed cones that you would normally expect to find. With no pine cones to protect and spread seeds, you'd be alright to ask, how SCP-867 goes about reproducing? The answer to that question is what makes this beautiful tree such a dangerous anomaly. The secret to how SCP-867 reproduces is found in its leaves. While they look like pine needles, SCP-867 leaves are in fact needles. Their structure is very similar to that of a hypodermic needle, and each one contains a single long, thin seed which sits above a small gas pocket at the base. When a living creature touches the leaves, the tree immediately reacts. It triggers the gas pocket in the base of the leaf to release, which injects the seed into the skin or whatever it has touched. The process is quite similar to that found in auto-injectors, like those used to quickly treat allergic reactions. The seed itself is extremely small and is coated in a liquid that has both anesthetic and coagulant properties, which makes the process virtually undetectable. Once implanted in the skin, these seeds can lay dormant for up to 2 weeks before they begin the germination process. And the true horror of SCP-867 is revealed. Once the seeds begin to sprout and grow, they will not seek to penetrate through the skin like a plant rising out of the soil. Instead, the strange plant will grow within its host body, spreading throughout the circulatory system. This process is extremely painful for the host. The plant's tendrils wind through their veins and capillary system, stretching and pressing against them as the blood spruce grows within them. Eventually, the ever-increasing side of the plant's tendrils becomes too much and the veins will begin to rupture. This leads to severe internal bleeding and soon after the death of the host. The entire process is quite quick, with it only taking 24 hours from the seed's first sprout to the host dying. But that single day will feel like an eternity to the affected individual as they feel the plant rapidly growing inside of their body. But even though the host has expired, this parasitoid tree is far from finished with them, or at least with their body. Soon after death, a new instance of the blood spruce will burst from the body. The red tree is quite small at first, but it will continue to quickly grow, just as it did within the host's body, and can reach maturity in just 30 days. And unlike most other plants, SCP-867 is able to grow regardless of light or soil conditions, because it does not produce food via photosynthesis. No, this plant is carnivorous. As it grows, the 867 will slowly consume its host's body until nothing remains except the blood-red tree. Instances of SCP-867 were first identified in Colorado during the 1990s, following reports of numerous disappearances of hikers and park rangers. The SCP Foundation dispatched a team to the area to investigate, and they soon discovered numerous incidents of the previously unidentified tree. Several still young specimens were acquired, though unfortunately this led to the deaths of several agents who are not yet aware of just how dangerous the red spruces could be. Once the threat was properly assessed, several specimens were flagged for containment and research purposes, while all of the other identified instances still in the wild were destroyed. The remaining instances of SCP-867 were classified as uselid and are now securely kept at a Foundation biocontainment site. Direct human contact with the plants is normally not allowed, and remote rovers are used for the majority of tests and upkeep. If for any reason it is necessary for a human to enter 867's containment cell, they are to wear full hazmat suits with a Kevlar underlayer, and upon exiting the cell must undergo a full herbicidal treatment and inspection. Should any possible puncture marks be discovered, they will be forced to quarantine for no less than 15 days. Ah, nature. It's so beautiful, peaceful, and calming, yet seems determined to try and kill us in a number of ways. If you're out hiking or camping in the woods, try to remember this extremely famous adage, which I may or may not have just made up. It goes, leaves of 3, let them be. Needles of red, well, you're probably already dead. Now go and watch another entry from the files of Dr. Bob,